Imagine a coach who outscored his opponents 2,821 to 42 over just a 5-year span.
Yeah, that is a completely insane statistic.
Right. And a tactician who accidentally invented the linebacker position.
Purely by accident.
And as if the history books weren't already tacked enough, he actually had the man who invented basketball serving as his assistant football coach.
Which still blows my mind every time I hear it.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are unpacking the chaotic, controversial, and entirely fascinating life of Fielding H. Yost.
Definitely one of the most polarizing figures in sports history.
Absolutely. So whether you're a diehard fan gearing up for the weekend games or, you're simply curious about how a disorganized collegiate pastime morphed into this multi-billion-dollar national industry we have today, you are in the right place.
We are so glad you're joining us.
We're looking at a really comprehensive Wikipedia article today detailing Yost's career. And this deep dive is custom tailored for you.
And our mission here goes well beyond just reciting old win-loss records.
Right. Nobody wants just a list of numbers.
Exactly. The goal is to fundamentally understand the transition of college football. We're looking at how it went from this highly unregulated, incredibly brutal club activity.
Borderline dangerous, really.
Oh, completely dangerous. Into a professionalized national phenomenon. And we get to watch that entire evolution unfold through the lens of one of the sport's most eccentric pioneers.
So to really understand how Yost maneuvered through that evolution, we have to start with where he came from.
Right. His background sets the whole tone.
It really does. He was born in 1871 in Fairview, West Virginia. And right from the start, he had this rugged, almost cinematic persona.
I mean, he was working as a teenage deputy marshal in his hometown.
A teenage deputy marshal.
Yeah. And he earned a public school teaching certificate at the age of 17.
Wow.
And spent his early years doing grueling manual labor in the local oil fields.
So he was not afraid of hard work. By the time he enrolled at West Virginia University to study law, which was in 1895, he was a 6-foot, 200-pound mountain of a man.
And he naturally gravitated toward playing tackle for their football team.
Which makes sense.
It does, but it is worth pausing just to consider human scale at that time. A 200-pound man in the 1890s was a massive physical presence.
Because people were generally just smaller back then.
Exactly. And football back then was essentially a rolling rugby scrum. The forward pass wasn't legalized yet.
Right. No throwing the ball downfield.
None. It was a game of brute force. Mass momentum plays like the flying wedge. And severe injuries.
So a guy of Yost's stature and background was tailor-made to dominate the line of scrimmage.
Completely. But what he did off the field during those playing days tells us far more about the environment of college athletics at the close of the 19th century.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the story of what is now known as the Yost Affair.
Oh, this is a great story.
It really perfectly captures that wild environment. So in October of 1896, Yost's West Virginia team played a 3-game series against Lafayette College.
Who was coached by a guy named Park H. Davis.
Right, and West Virginia lost all 3 games, which, by the way, were played on 3 different fields over 3 consecutive days.
Just a grueling schedule.
Now, logic dictates you take your lumps, head back to campus, and go to class.
Right, you go back to studying law.
Not Yost. The very next week, he transferred mid-season to Lafayette.
He literally joined the team that had just battered him for 3 days straight.
Solely so he could play for Lafayette in their historic rivalry game against the Penn Quakers.
He helps Lafayette win that game 6-4.
Packs his bags.
And transfers right back to West Virginia 2 weeks later.
And when reporters asked him to explain himself, he flatly stated he only came to play football.
What's fascinating here is the absolute lack of infrastructure. Early college sports were a total free-for-all.
I mean, no rules at all.
There was no NCAA, there were practically no eligibility limits, and concepts like academic standing or transfer portals.
Where players today have to officially register their intent to change schools.
Exactly. None of that existed. You could hop on a steam train and roll in a rival school for a couple of weeks to play one major game and head home.
Just a hired gun.
Yeah. The Yost Affair is prime evidence of a sport operating in the Wild West. It sets the stage for why governing bodies, standardized rules, and dedicated professional coaches eventually became a matter of survival for the game.
And it didn't take long for Yost to realize that coaching was where the real leverage was.
Not at all.
He starts his coaching sprint at age 26 in 1897 at Ohio Wesleyan. And he leads them to a 7-1-1 record in his first year.
But the transition from player to coach wasn't exactly a clean break for him.
No, it wasn't. During a game against the University of Michigan, Yost, the paid head coach and very much a
He
non-student,
secretly suited up.
he secretly suited up and played left tackle for Ohio Wesleyan.
I mean, can you imagine?
When Michigan figured out the massive guy blocking their defensive line was the opposing coach,
They were not happy.
no, they launched a massive formal protest and blacklisted Ohio Wesleyan from their schedule entirely.
It paints a ridiculous picture. The head coach hiding in plain sight on the offensive line.
It's hilarious.
But it underscores his relentless, almost manic drive to win at all costs. And crucially, that scandal didn't derail his career at all.
Not even a little bit.
At this point in history, he was acting as a highly paid mercenary, traveling the country, offering his services to the highest bidder, and building a resume based purely on wins.
And the bids kept getting higher.
Oh, yeah.
In 1898, he goes to Nebraska. He demands and gets paid $1,000 for just 10 weeks of work.
Which was an astronomical sum for a seasonal sports gig back then.
And he delivers an 8-3 record. Then he heads to the University of Kansas in 1899.
And it is a big turning point.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we see the early roots of sports science.
Yes.
Yost isolated his Kansas team from the rest of the student body. He fed them a specially prepared diet.
A literal training camp.
Exactly. They went a perfect 10 and outscored their opponents 280-37.
But the detail that always stops people in their tracks is his coaching staff.
Yes. During that 1899 season at Kansas, his assistant football coach was James Naismith,
The man who literally invented the game of basketball.
taking orders on the gridiron from fielding Yost.
It is an incredible historical crossover, especially when you consider their contrasting philosophies.
Right, they were very different guys.
Very. Naismith invented basketball as an indoor activity to keep young men out of trouble during the harsh New England winters. It was about physical education and moral development.
Whereas Yost viewed football as an all-consuming pursuit of victory.
Exactly. But look at the broader pattern Yost is establishing by the time he hits Kansas, and then Stanford and San Jose Normal in 1900.
He is bouncing from program to program.
Demanding top dollar and actively legitimizing the concept of coaching as a respected profession.
Because prior to this, coaching was often just a part-time volunteer gig for interested alumni.
Right. Yost was demanding to be compensated on par with university professors, and he got away with it because he guaranteed dominance.
And that string of dominance led him to the job that would permanently define his legacy.
Michigan.
In 1901, Charles A. Baird, the athletic director at the University of Michigan, hires Yost as head coach. This is the era of the point-a-minute squads.
The stats here are just staggering.
From 1901 to 1905, Yost's Michigan teams went 55-1-1, and the point differential is almost impossible to process. Over those 5 seasons, they outscored their opponents by a combined margin of 2,821 to 42.
I mean, in his first season alone, the 1901 team outscored the opposition 550 to 0.
Not a single point allowed all year.
When you look at numbers like that, it's clear they were functionally playing a completely different sport than their competitors. They were faster, better conditioned, and tactically superior.
And that 1901 season culminated in a milestone event that we all recognize today. The very first college football bowl game.
The 1902 Rose Bowl.
Michigan takes a train out west and absolutely steamrolls Stanford by a score of 49 to 0.
And the irony is, Stanford was the exact team Yost had coached just 1 year prior.
Talk about awkward.
Yeah. And the game was such an uncompetitive blowout that the Tournament of Roses officials abandoned football and replaced it with chariot races for over a decade, before ever trying football again.
Chariot races. That's how bad they beat them. So, how is he physically achieving this on the field? The records point to a few massive strategic leaps. First, he was a pioneer of the hurry-up offense.
Right. A huge innovation.
Instead of slowly huddling and resting between plays, he constantly yelled at his players to hurry up and snap the ball before the defense could set.
Which earned him the nickname Hurry Up Yost.
He also utilized a short punt formation and developed a signature play called Old 83.
Basically, Old 83 was the granddaddy of the modern option play,
where the quarterback reads the defense's reaction on the fly and decides whether to keep the ball himself or pitch it to a trailing running back.
Those offensive innovations were brilliant because they capitalized on the superior conditioning of his diet camp players. But we also have to highlight a monumental defensive shift that happened under his watch.
Okay, let's hear it.
In 1904, Yost's center, a massive player named Germany Schultz, made a rogue decision. Instead of playing down in the dirt on the line of scrimmage, Schultz decided on his own to stand up behind the defensive line so he could see the play developing.
He effectively invented the position of linebacker.
Just right there on the field.
But wait, didn't Yost pride himself on absolute control? How did he react to a player just inventing a new position in the middle of a game?
Well, initially he was horrified. He ordered Schultz back onto the line.
That sounds like him.
But Yost possessed a crucial trait for any great tactician: pragmatism. He watched the flow of the game, realized Schultz was suddenly blowing up every offensive play because of that new vantage point, and he quickly changed his mind.
He adopted the strategy entirely.
Yes. True brilliance often isn't about having every original idea. It's about recognizing the wisdom in the ideas of others and integrating them faster than your competitors.
He wasn't stubborn when it came to a winning scheme, but as the history shows, he could be incredibly stubborn when it came to university politics.
Oh, extreme.
By 1906, the landscape of college football was shifting. The sheer violence of the sport was causing national outcry.
People were actually dying on the field.
Right, and the president of Michigan at the time, James Angel, wanted sweeping reforms. Angel called for new rules, like limiting teams to just 5 games a season.
And requiring coaches to be full-time university faculty rather than these highly paid independent contractors.
This was the classic clash between academics and athletics.
This was the establishment trying to rein in the very monster they had helped create. President Angel fundamentally believed that the sport had to be subservient to the academic mission of the university.
Which makes sense for a university president.
Absolutely. But Yost naturally fought these regulations tooth and nail. He wanted maximum games, maximum exposure, and zero interference from academic administrators.
But how does a football coach win a power struggle against the president of the university?
By weaponizing his popularity.
Wow.
Because of his unprecedented success, Yost had the backing of the alumni base and, crucially, the university's board of regents.
So he went over the president's head.
He convinced the board to support his vision over the president's. Consequently, Michigan outright refused to adhere to the new league rules. They were essentially voted out of the conference.
And Michigan played as an independent program from 1907 all the way until 1916.
It's hard to even wrap your head around Michigan football not being part of the Big Ten.
But Yost's leverage was just that immense. Eventually, tensions cooled, they returned to the conference, and Yost simply picked up right where he left off.
He won national championships in 1918 and 1923.
But he had a special fondness for his 1925 squad. This team featured the famous Benny to Benny show with quarterback Benny Friedman and Benny Oosterban.
An iconic duo.
Yost went on record calling them the greatest football team he ever coached and the greatest he ever saw in action, which says a lot coming from the architect of the point-a-minute era.
It does. But as we move into the 1920s, Yost's influence expanded far beyond calling plays on a Saturday afternoon. As he transitioned away from the sidelines, he entrenched himself in the administrative machinery of the university.
Right. He took on the role of athletic director in 1921 and held that massive post until 1940.
This is the era where he literally altered the physical geography of the campus.
He spearheaded massive infrastructure projects that still define the university today. He oversaw the excavation and construction of Michigan Stadium, the Big House.
And he insisted on building the footings so deep that the stadium could eventually be expanded to hold well over 100,000 people.
Talk about vision. He also built Yost Fieldhouse, which was an innovative, massive indoor practice facility concept for its time. And he even developed the university golf course.
He wasn't just coaching a team anymore, he was building a corporate sports empire.
And at the same time, he was exporting his football philosophy across the entire country through his coaching tree. Documentation from the time reviews an incredible statistic.
Let's hear it.
No fewer than 77 men who either played for Yost or coached under him went on to become head coaches themselves.
It's a staggering multiplier effect. And these weren't just small regional programs. 2 of them went on to become head coaches in the NFL.
Dan McGogan, who played and coached under Yost, went on to become a legendary multi-decade head coach at Vanderbilt.
Yost was effectively seeding the entire nation with his methods, his offensive schemes, and his relentless philosophy. In fact, he is widely credited with coining a phrase that is still universally used in locker rooms today: football builds character.
So what does this all mean when we step back and evaluate the entirety of his life? When we look at a figure with this much historical weight, we have to examine the complete picture. And it is very clear from the historical records that Yost left behind a deeply complicated, often contradictory legacy.
Very contradictory.
On one hand, he was known as a devout Christian who famously refused to swear. Records also show he was among the first major coaches to integrate his programs in terms of religion, allowing Jewish players on his teams when many others wouldn't.
Guys like Joe Magidson and the All-American quarterback we mentioned earlier, Benny Friedman.
Yes, but the historical accounts also present significant controversies regarding his prejudices, particularly concerning the broader societal issues of the early 20th century regarding religion, immigration, and race.
Exactly.
The historical debate here is heavy. For instance, there is a prominent book by sports historian Murray Sperber that places the principal responsibility for the Big Ten's blackballing and boycotting of Notre Dame squarely on Yost's shoulders.
That's a major claim.
The claim in that text is that Yost was deeply motivated by the anti-Catholic and anti-immigrant prejudice that was rampant during that era, and used his massive influence to financially and competitively starve Notre Dame by keeping them off the schedule.
Now, other historians push back on that narrative. They argue that the boycott wasn't rooted in systemic prejudice, but was simply the result of a bitter, deeply personal, and highly petty feud between Yost and Notre Dame's legendary head coach, Knute Rockne.
Furthermore, university archives show that in 2021, a campus committee officially recommended removing Yost's name from the campus ice hockey arena.
And the committee specifically cited a documented history of racial issues and exclusionary practices involving him during his long tenure as both football coach and athletic director.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
I think it is vital to explicitly state to you, our listener, that in our deep dive today, we are not taking sides, passing moral judgment, or endorsing any of these specific viewpoints. Our role here is strictly and impartially to report the historical debates and the documented facts as they exist in the records.
perfectly said.
But what this ongoing debate illustrates so perfectly is the reality of history. Historical figures of this magnitude are incredibly layered. They are the architects of the systems and institutions we revere today, yet they often hold views or take actions that are heavily scrutinized through the lens of history.
Modern universities and institutions are still actively grappling with how to contextualize the complex legacies of their founders. It's a stark reminder that history is rarely just a simple, clean ledger of wins and losses.
That really contextualizes the weight of the history you feel when you walk into a venue like the Big House. It's never just concrete and turf.
So, to wrap up the sheer scale of Yost's impact, if you have ever turned on your TV on a fall Saturday and watched a modern college football game,
If you've marveled at 100,000 fans packing into a giant stadium,
if you've watched a quarterback run a no-huddle, hurry-up offense to catch a defense sleeping,
or if you've read about a head coach signing a multi-million-dollar contract to jump from one school to another,
you are essentially watching a game shaped directly in fielding Yost's image. His influence even trickles down to the broadcast booth.
oh, this is a great detail.
Yost, with his West Virginia drawl, had this very unusual pronunciation of the state he lived in, famously calling it Michigan.
That exact pronunciation was adopted by early radio broadcasters and still lives on in sports media today.
His fingerprints are truly everywhere on the sport.
And this raises an important question, something we want to leave you with to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
I love this.
Today, fans, analysts, and lawmakers constantly debate the commercialization of college sports. We talk about name, image, and likeness deals, NIL, and the transfer portal as if they are modern corruptions of a purely amateur academic pursuit.
But given Yost's history as a highly paid mercenary, his relentless pursuit of revenue-generating stadiums, and his battles to keep athletics independent from academic oversight,
If Fielding Yost were operating in today's landscape, with private equity firms beginning to circle college athletic departments, would he even bother being a football coach?
or would he bypass the turf entirely to become a corporate CEO running a collegiate sports conglomerate?
It makes you wonder if the ultimate logical evolution of college football won't be decided on the field at all, but rather in the boardroom.
That is a fascinating angle to consider as the business of the sport keeps expanding. Thank you so much for exploring this history with us today. Keep questioning the foundations behind the headlines, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.